Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this final afternoon of the pre-iLRF. Our last workshop for today is on the topic of peer assessment using Moodle. This workshop will be facilitated by our dear colleagues, Ms. Zabiba Ibrahim and Ms. Norhasliza Hashim. These two facilitators are very knowledgeable and possess vast experiences in the management of teaching and learning activities using Moodle. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Zabiba and Ms. Norhasliza to begin the session.
Thank you, my Honorable and Ms. MC for the role, and welcome to my Honorable participants and colleagues. Okay, for this session, I'm going to assist by Ms. Liza and Ms. Aidalina for throughout this workshop session. Okay, I would like to introduce myself first. I am Zabiba Ibrahim from e-learning department in IMU. I'm working in with IMU since 2008, and I've been exposed to the teaching and learning activities in using the learning management system start from the moment that I joined IMU. Okay, so throughout this session, we are going to learn on how to conduct the peer assessment using Moodle, which is a known platform as a learning management system. And you are going to have a hands-on session using our platform using our e-training platform for in having experience as a student when you do the peer assessment. Okay, before we go ado, let me share my screen first. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Liver. Okay, so from this workshop, I hope that you are able to apply on how to set up workshop activity as to conduct the peer assessment, and you are going to have the experience as a student in submission phase and assessment phase. So that will be part of the peer assessment, and at the end you are able to describe the flow on how to conduct the workshop for peer assessment activity. Right? Okay. Okay. Before we go further on the next content I'm going to show you, I will share to you the in the chat box on to get access to this platform for this hands-on session. Okay, so you can get into this platform through the chat box. You can check on the chat box for the link of accessing our e-training portal, where we put all the materials and activities for this workshop. And for those who are from as external participants, you are able to access this portal using this. I'm going to show you the list of the username and password that you can use to access this e-training. Okay, you can pick which one that available for you to access to this e-training portal. And okay, this is how it looks like when you are assessing the course on e-training. So you will see the using workshop activity for peer assessment. Then you can click on the login on the top right corner and fill in the username that I displayed just now and the password accordingly. Then click login. Okay. So let me show you back to the list of the participant username and password that you can use. So those from IMU staff you are able to access the e-training portal. If you remember the one that you are using for accessing the ABC course, you can go to that link and using your own credential, your username and password, the same as the one that you are using to access all the system in iNew. Then click on link again on the chat box so that you can directly access to this course. So it will prompt you the password for the access enrollment. The password will be the same as the one in the list, which is LRF at INU. Okay. Can I check whether you're able to access the course in the e-training? So if you want to check whether you are accessing the correct one, it should be like this one. Okay, then you should be able to see the login link on the top right corner. Click login. Example. Okay, so this is the course. If you click on the general, you can see the first on top will be the video. Are you ready? Might be I can check for those who are already in. All right. Okay. So what is peer assessment? Peer assessment is assessment of student work that assessed by the other students is using the established criteria that defined by the lecturer or by the teacher. So using this peer assessment, the student will be expected to increase their communication skill in delivering the feedback, and they can do their self-evaluation, and then they can increase also their observation skills when they are doing the assessment on their colleagues' work. Okay, I want to share you about the peer assessment from the video that we have just now. Okay, let's look into the video. Can you see the video? Can you hear the audio from the video? Cannot.
Okay, right. How about now? Okay, maybe I can have to restart again the video. How about now? Can you hear the video from the video, the audio from the video?
No. Not yet. Not yet. There's no audio.
Okay, let me share again. Maybe I have to do the share again. All right, how about now?
Increases student responsibility
Yes,
and
we
autonomy.
can hear the
All
audio.
right, okay,
Move the
sorry
student
about the
from
technical
passive
problem.
learner to active learner. Peer assessment provides an opportunity for students to practice working with others, communicating with others, and helping others to improve, all of which are important skills for the increasingly collaborative world in which we live. Another benefit of peer assessment is that students can adjust their own work and thinking by investigating the work of others. Students must feel that the classroom is a safe and supportive environment. For peer assessment, they must trust each other to provide honest and constructive feedback. This allows them to become comfortable with one another, which increases the quality of the feedback. It does help to learn how to receive feedback from different people, so an educator should encourage students to get feedback from all learners throughout the year. Providing peer feedback and working toward
Okay,
peer
that is
assessment
all that I want
may
to
not
share
be familiar
from
to
this
all
video.
students. So building peer assessment should be built into the classroom learning goals and with its own rubric on how it should be performed. Peer assessment.
Okay, so that is how the students can benefit from their peer assessment activity. Right? And for this peer assessment, when we want to conduct on the learning management system, the one that we are using currently in IMU is Moodle. So we are using one of the activity that we call it as workshop. Why workshop? Because the workshops are able to provide to enable the students will be able to submit, and we can allocate the submission among the students. That's why we use this workshop. So there are two types of peer assessment actually. There are in terms of type of work that they are going to do, type of the assessment that they are going to do. For example, like if there are for individual work, if the students are going to submit the written submission, and you are going, and the teacher will be allocated the submission that all the submission that were submitted by the students among the students, the other students. So in this type of peer assessment, the student will evaluate the work, I mean the submission that has been submitted on the learning management system. And from this, the students are going to be, they can see, they can experience and how the teacher are assessing their work as teacher, right? Okay. The other types of group the other types of peer assessment is the group work, where if the students are going to do a group work, a work in the group, and then they are going to assess every members in terms of their contribution to complete the work. So that is another kind of peer assessment, right? Okay, so on during this workshop, I'm going to emphasize on the group work peer assessment, where you are going to be a student within a group, and you are going to give the feedback, evaluate your peers in terms of their contribution on completing the work. Okay, so in this workshop, once you created the workshop, you are going to have 5 phases. First one is the setting up, where you can, in the setup phase, you are supposed to prepare the assessment form, where the assessment form that been designed will be based on the grading strategy that you are going to set. And then when we move to the submission phase, the students are able to start and doing their submission. They can submit directly on the learning management portal, where they can have the submission. There are 2 types of submission, whether they can type in directly on the text box provided on the learning management system, or they can have the attachment, they have to attach the file. Then the next following phase will be the assessment, where this is the actual part of peer assessment happen actually. During this assessment, the student will be allocating the submission from they will be allocating the submission among them, and they have to individually assess every submission that allocated to them. And by the end, once they complete all the assessment, then we move to the grading phase, where the system are able to do the calculation based on the assessment that done by all the students. And then finally, when we move to the close phase, where the students are able to see every feedback, every assessment that done by their peers, and as well as the example of the submission that might be selected by the teacher or by the lecturer as a good example of the submission for this assignment. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create this workshop activity. Let's go to the water. Okay. Okay, when you create the submission, when you create the activity, example week. Okay, for those who are as a teacher or as a lecturer, if you want to create the activity, you have to make sure that you have the turn editing on button where you are able to edit the page, and then you can go to the section that you want to place the activity, and then click add activity. Okay, so for this workshop, it will be listed over here. This is the workshop that I told you. If you want to know further about the workshop, you can click on the I there, so that it will be explained further on this about the workshop activity. So when you click on the workshop, it goes to the setting page, where this is the page where you have to define how you're going to conduct the workshop or the peer assessment. So you have to name the workshop name. So I'm going to name as iLRF2021 peer assessment. Peer assessment as a group work. And then you can put the description where you have to explain to the students what is the goal that they are going to get from this peer assessment. Okay, you are going to assess your team members on project work. Okay, right. So then you can explain further, and if you want to make this description available directly on the page, you can tick this option where when they go into the course, they can see directly about this activity. Right. Okay, so the next section that you have to define is the grading strategy in the grading setting. In this grading setting, you are supposed to define which type of grading that you want to use for the assessment. So if you are using the accumulative grade, I will explain further on this accumulative grading. But for this workshop, I'm going to use the rubric. Okay, and you have to define also how many grades that contribute from this peer assessment. So from this workshop, there are two types of grade that are going to be contribute. First is the grade for submission here, and grade for the assessment. So grade for the submission is the grade that captured or calculated from the assessment that did by the students using the rubric that we are going to define later. Then the grade for assessment is marks that taken when the system calculate how good you are being the assessor. So how good you are, how different you are from among the assessor in giving the marks or grade your colleagues' work. So this one might be different when we do the calculation of the peer assessment. Okay, and then you can define what is the capacity mark for both, but you can just leave it also the empty if let's say, because this grade to pass and assessment grade to pass is might be needed when you define the completion, when you want to have the tracking. Okay. Okay, then move to the next option is on the submission settings. If you define the instruction for the submission here, on the page when the students enter the submission phase, they can see this instruction. So you have to define clearly what the students are supposed to do in this peer assessment. So you are going to ask them to write your name, write where do you come from? Okay, but for the written assignment, might be you can For example, might be you want to do for peer assessment based on the reflection or based on the any guided reading that they have to do, then you have to put in the more proper instruction for the students. And as mentioned earlier, I mentioned that there are two types of submission, right? So you can have both online text and file attachment. But for this hands-on session, I'm going to use only the online text. And if you are defining the file attachment, the following setting is for the file related to the file attachment. You can define how many attachment that you are allowed for every single student, and what is the file type allowed for them to be uploaded into this e-learning to this portal, and what is the maximum size for every single file that they're going to upload. Okay, so for this session, I'm not going to use the file attachment, and then I just leave it as online text. Okay. And for the next section will be assessment settings. Same as the submission setting, you have to put in the instruction for the students what they are going to do for during the assessment. So you are going to assess all the team members in your group in terms of their contribution in your group work, right? Okay, something like that. And then if let's say you want to insert the the self-assessment, you can pick this option. So part of the assessment with on their clicks, they themselves also have to do the assessment. Okay. And then the next following part will be the feedback. If you choose the disable, but if you disable the option on overall feedback, so the students will not getting any overall feedback from their colleagues. But it's good if you are choosing the enable or with optional or enable with required for if you are using peer assessment on the individual work or the written submission. So that their colleagues can leave a comment, give a good comment, and then what to be improved when they are doing the assessment later. Okay, but for this hands-on session, I'm not going to use the overall feedback. And then if you since we are going to have the group work, I'm not going to use any example submission because we are not going to assess the submission. We are going to assess the team members, right? So I'm not going to use the example submission. But if you want to do the peer assessment based on the written submission, as mentioned earlier, on the individual type for individual submission, then you can choose example submission. So that what is good to have the example submission is the student will be able to do the assessment based on the example submission provided by the lecturer or by the teacher. So before they go further on assess their friends, they can do the assessment on the sample first and then do the comparison whether they are a good assessor or not based on the example that given by the lecturers. And then after that, they can proceed with the assessment on their works, on their team members, right? Okay, so for this one, I'm not going to activate the example. And then under the availability, this is where we can define the deadline for the students to submit the submission, okay, and the deadline for them to finish on the assessment. Okay, if you are define the submission deadline, if you define the submission deadline and the submission, the deadline of the assessment, these two deadline will be appear on their timeline on this e-learning portal, meaning that they can check on the timeline on their dashboard, what they are supposed to do, what is the deadline for them to complete these two activities, which is the submission and the assessment. So if you define the deadline of the submission and the starting date of the assessment, you can let the system to switch automatically when you click on the switch to the next phase after submission deadline, this is going to be checked by the system. When it reach to the submission deadline, the system will do the allocation and automatically switch to the assessment phase. But if you not define any deadline, right, for these two, so the transition from submission phase to the assessment phase has to be done manually. I will show you shortly, because since we have a short time for this workshop, I'm going to use the transition in manually mode. Okay. And then the common in the common we can have we can run this workshop activity in group mode, where we can let every member, as for this hands-on session, you are going to assess every members in this in the assessment. So we have to define the groups, and we have to do the grouping as well. Okay. Okay. I think I have to do some adjustment on the setting for the grouping because I'm not defined yet in the on the grouping. Let me do that first. Probably I can freeze unshare first on this one, since I have to do some adjustment on the grouping. Okay, might be during this, I give you some break about 2 to 3 minutes. Maybe you can take water just to freshen. Okay, and then once I'm done on the grouping, then I can show you back to the setting of the workshop. Okay, I'm back to share to you the Okay, so we already reached to the end. To the end of the setting page. If there is also some other option that might be you want to use, but for this session, I'm going to use the student can manually mark the activities completed. Means that this is for the tracking purpose. Once the students are complete on doing the submission and assessment, they can click on the checkbox to indicate that they already complete the this activity. Okay, once I click on save and display, I hope that those who are in the course page, you can go to the iLRF peer assessment group. You should be able to see this page. As a student, it will be probably like this. It will be appear like this one. Because you are enrolled as a student, right? So you should be able to get something like this one. Are you getting the same page as mine? I hope that all of you are getting to this page, right?
Yes, correct.
All right, thank you. Okay, on this setting, on the setup phase, it shows there, okay, the workshop is still not ready yet. for you to do the submission. So as a teacher or as the lecturer for this workshop, okay, you are supposed to getting this display. You can it will be looks like this one. Okay, this is all the tasks that are supposed to complete on that particular phase. For example, in the setup phase, you have to make sure that you set the workshop description. Remember the one that I showed to you. What is the goal that what you have to share the goal from this activity, what they are going to be expect to have from this activity, and then provide the instruction for the submission, as well as the instruction for the assessment. And then, okay, the next step will be the assessment form. So this is the setting where you have to define your assessment form. Remember that we have the grading strategy that we have to define during when we're creating the workshop. So the assessment form will appear based on the grading strategy that you selected. So in this there are 4 types of grading strategy. First, the cumulative grading, where it's same as, if you remember the one that you are always using in the assignment, where you have to give the marks based on that particular criteria. So that is a cumulative grading, where every aspect have a range of the marks. So you can in this cumulative grading, you have to define what aspect that you are going to assess and what is the maximum grade for that aspect. Okay, you have 2 types of grading, point and scale. But if you are using the scale, there's no marks will be showing in from this cumulative grading. But if you choose the point, then at the for the submission grade, you will get the grades in point form. So, but you still able to combine both grading, both of grading type, point and scale. Okay. But if you're just using the scale, by the end of this assessment, every student will be getting 0 for the submission grade. Okay, so be careful. And then you have to make sure that you define clearly on the your grading strategy. Okay, the next type of grading strategy will be the comments. Okay, this is same as the one that I mentioned using the scale, where it just allow the student give the comment based on the aspect that defined by the lecturer or by the teacher. For example, you have to give the comment on the content, or might be give a comment based on the design, based on give the comment about the what else that might be the presentation done by that student. So that this is a type of feedback assessment form that you can use for the as a comments, where it not involve any grading. Okay, and the next following type, it will be the numbers of errors. Normally we use these numbers of errors when you want to start on teaching the students using the peer assessment for written submission. For example, if you have the reflection or any assignment which having a dedicated structure, then you can define the aspect, the session here is based on the existing of the particular answers or part that you want to have in the written submission. For example, might be the title must be there. So you can check, they can check whether the title is there, whether the creative idea is present in the written assignment, whether the abstract is well written in the written submission. So that is kind of numbers of errors. So this is a starting point for if you want to use for the peer assessment based on the written submission. Okay, but for the next type of assessment grading strategy is rubric. This is commonly used for peer assessment based on the group work. So where you can define this criteria and what is the descriptive level that you are going to have for that particular criteria. So you can have a mix up of criteria with a few levels. For example, maybe you have one criteria with the 3 levels, one criteria with the 2 levels. So you can mix up of these two, and then you can choose which form how you're going to display the assessment form, whether in this form like this one, or as a grid view like this example for like this form. All right. Okay. That is the rubric. So for today's session, for the hands-on session, I'm going to use the rubric in the grid view option. Okay, that is the once you finish on the define the assessment form, then we can switch to the submission phase. Okay, so after you finish, okay, this is how it looks like when you define the rubric, where you can set the criteria and what is the level of grade and its definition, and then you can add more criteria then, and then at the end you can choose which one that you want to display the rubric, whether list or in grid form. You can have the option to save and preview, and you can also click save and close. Okay, if you click on the save and preview, you can see how it looks like when the students click on the assess button for their colleagues. Okay, so this is how it looks like when they click assess button for their colleagues, for their peers. Okay, so this is then once you finish on constructing or designing the assessment form, you can click save and close. And one more thing, remember the one that about the example submission. For the peer assessment based on the written submission, you can have the example. So the example of submission will appear. The task for the teacher to submit the example submission will appear beneath the edit assessment form. Why? Because from the submission, you are going to do the assessment based on the sample, so that it can be example for the students to do the trying for the testing for their trial version. Okay, then when you're ready, then you can go to the switch to the next phase. Okay, I think this is the moment that you can start participate in this for this activity. Can you go to the page? And there might be, if you're still on the page, we can just refresh, and you should be able to see the submission phase is activated. Okay, so the submission phase will be highlighted. It will be the light green background color, and then you can see the submission, the instruction for the submission appear under the instruction of for submission, and then you should be able to see the add submission button. Okay, so this is the task that the students have to do. When you click add submission, you should be able to see the title box as well as the submission content. So you have to write down your name and where you come from. Then don't forget to click Save Changes. As for the lecturers or as for the teacher, you can monitor the progression of the submission by the students. Okay. As you can see here, this is the task that you are going to do during the submission phase as the teacher. Okay, and the instruction is already there when we place the instruction, and then you can see what is the expected numbers of submission from the students, and how many students already submitted, and how many submission that going to be allocated. Okay, if you scroll further down, as a teacher, you can see how many submission already in the system, and then how many students are not submitted yet. Okay, this is how you can monitor from time to time whether the students already complete the submission or not. They are still in the submission phase. And then if you scroll further down, you can see their submission here and the date of their submission. Okay. Can I see some progress of the submission from my lovely students? If you want to see more students, you can see the showing items here, so that you can see all the students at one time, and then you also can view the students by the group if you define the activity running to be in a group, right? Okay. I hope that might be, I give you 5 minutes to submit. While waiting for all of you to submit, I'm going to show you something about in the submission phase. Remember the part where we define the availability. Okay, might be I can go to show to you that part. Okay, in the availability, remember if you define the open submission and the submission deadline, okay, this submission deadline will be appear in the timeline of the students on their dashboard. And if you define the opening and the deadline of the assessment as well will be appear on their timeline in dashboard. And then you can let the system to switch automatically from the submission to the assessment when you click on the switch option. By right, that you have to define the submission of the deadline the open assessment from starting date must be later than the submission deadline. It cannot be overlap. Okay, so you have to make sure that the submission deadline and open for assessment from date is not overlap. So you can define, for example, might be I want to put later than a few hours after the deadline of the submission. So when it reach to after this deadline, the system will do the allocation and it will be turned into the assessment form. Okay, here is where the transition will be occurred if we define the availability date. Since I'm not setting that one, the switching, the automatically switching will be not happen for this workshop. Okay, can we have how many already submitted? 5 students already submitted. Good. Okay, so do you want to wait until how many students already in? 32 students. I don't think that we have 32 students, right? Can I proceed to the assessment? Is that okay with you? Or we have to wait for another few minutes? Okay, Dr. Lim Lei Chen, thank you for participating in this hands-on session. How about the other groups? Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Okay, so for the group work, as a teacher, you can update to the students how many from among their team members that submitting in the workshop for the peer assessment, especially when we do the peer assessment for based on the PBL or based on the TBL. So you can update to them how many students already submitted and how many students are not submitted. So actually it's crucial if let's say you want to have everybody participate in this activity, they must follow the deadline of the submission and assessment. Is that okay for me to switch to the next phase? Okay, one thing when we have the group work peer assessment, if the students not submitting, not do the submission, what will happen is there's nothing for their colleagues to assess. Meaning to say that the submission, even type in their email or type in their name, ID, that will be the representative of themselves in this peer assessment. So if you want to do the peer assessment for the group work, everybody must must submit the written submission. It's just as simple as much as possible. For example, you just type in the ID number just to represent themselves in this assessment. If there's no submission from them, then we cannot do the allocation of the submission. That's why it is important for every team members to do the submission. So from my point of view, if let's say the students not do the submission, they are actually not contributed their participation in this activity. Is that right? What do you think, Dr. Nilesh? How about the others lecturer? Have you conducted the peer assessment? Okay, so since we have a few submission there in this activity, then the next phase will be the allocate submission. So in this task, what we are going to do is we are going to allocate the submission. So we have about 11 submission here. I hope that every single group already have the submission. And then we are going to expect it to have 32, but for today's session, we're going to have only 11 submission. And then we are going to do the allocation for this 11 submission. So what I'm going to do as a teacher or as a lecturer, you can go to the allocate submission. So in this allocate submission, actually you have 3 types of allocation. Okay, what it means by allocation, actually the allocation is the one when you decide which submission to be given to the other students for them to assess. Okay, so we have 3 types of allocation: manual, random, and schedule. Okay, so in manual allocation, you can select manually who is the reviewer, who is the reviewee for each submission. So it based on every single user, every single student in this activity. But if you are choosing the random allocation, the allocation will be defined automatically based on the specification that you define in the option for random allocation. So manual allocation will be good if you have small numbers of students, for example, and then you want to select who going to be given for that particular submission. But for the random allocation, based on the specification, you will let the system to allocate the submission among the students. Okay, but compared to the scheduled allocation, remember the one that we defined on the availability, where we set the system to switch automatically from submission phase to the allocation to the assessment phase. This is where we can use the scheduled allocation. in the scheduled allocation, we have the option of random allocation. So based on the random allocation specification, we let the system to select all the submission will be distributed among the students, whether in group or without the group. Okay. So let me show you the example of the how it looks like on the random allocation. Okay, this is the space, the setting or the options on the random allocation. Okay, if you're running the activity, the workshop activity is in separate group, so the allocation will be within that group. But if you're running on without the group or no group, then will be the group mode will be showing as no group, meaning that you are freely to distribute it to all students. Okay, so based then you can define how many numbers of reviews based on the submission or based on the reviewer. So for the group activity, for this group activity, when how you can define how many submission there, if you want to distribute to all students, to all the members in that group, so you have to find which is the maximum numbers among the group. For example, might be in the group, you can have about, might be 5 in each group. So you can define every student will getting 5 submission, meaning that they can see, they can have all the submission from their team members. Okay. Then you have option to remove current allocation. If the current allocation is not happen, then you don't have to do, you don't have to check on the remove allocation. But if let's say the allocation is already done and you want to remove that current allocation, then you have to opt this option. Okay, and then the participants can access without having submitting any submitted anything, means that for those who are not do any submission, they still can do the assessment, but they are not getting the grading grading for the submission because there's no submission from them. So there's no assessment on their work. That's why I mentioned earlier, in group work for peer assessment, they have to submit something, at least their name or their ID number to represent themselves, so that every team members can assess themselves on in terms of their contribution to the group work. Right. Okay, so this is the option on the random allocation. I'm going to start on do the allocation. So when I click save changes, for those who are not submitting, you are still able to do the assessment, but you are not going to have getting the you're not going to get the grading for the grade for the submission. Okay, so it will be listed there. All the that submission will be distributed within the group, and then when you go back to the activity, okay, this is a teacher view. You are still on the submission because the allocation must be happen during in the submission phase. If you switch to the assessment phase, you cannot do the allocation anymore, right? So that's why when we define the availability, that allocation will be happen right the end of the submission. Okay, so I have another one, so I have to run again the allocation. I can go back to the allocation and run again the option on the random allocation, so that to make sure that every submission will be distributed among the within the group. I hope that everybody already getting the allocation. And then during the submission phase, okay, as I mentioned earlier, even I already allocated the submission, you are still not be able to see the submission, your peers submission. So I'm going to switch to the assessment form. Just click on the switch to the next phase here, or switch to the assessment phase here. So when I change from phase to phase, the system will be prompt me whether I want to confirm on the transition or not. So when I click on the continue, it will be proceed. But if I click on the cancel, it will be remain on the same phase. Okay. So if you refresh the page if you refresh the page, you will see it will look like this one. Okay. All right. Okay. So as you can see here, assessment phase has been highlighted, and you can see the assess peers with the gray tick. Gray ticks means that you are not complete yet on assess the peers. So if you scroll further down, you can see this is the assess button for you to reach to the submission by that particular students. Okay, so for this example, I have 2 submissions from these 2 students, Mr. Bolsobri and Dr. Lim Le Cheng. So I will be able to assess these 2 students. So you can check on your own page. Then when I can start on do the assessment by clicking the assess button. Right? And I can assess them using this rubric. So you just pick which one that's suitable. Okay. To this for these students. So then after I choose all the all the criteria and label, then I can click save and show next. If you click save and show next, it will be go to the next submission from my peers. And then if you click save and continue, it will be saved, and you still can continue on the doing the assessment. Okay, for that, let's say I want to go for the next one, which is it was showing the submission from Dr. Lim Le Cheng, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Okay. So I'm going to assess Dr. Lim Le Cheng. Okay. The most common problem with the group work peer assessment is every student intend to mark every members as the maximum as they can, because something like a deal, you have to give me full marks in order for me to give full marks, right? Something like that. But we have to encourage the students to assess honestly, so that actually it can contribute towards the improvement for that particular students, right? Okay. Then when you're done, you can click save and close. So if you finish, then the button will be turned to be reassess, meaning that you are still able to do assessment for for that particular colleagues. But if let's say if you want to reassess them, okay, as long as it's still in the assessment phase and based on the if there's within the timeline, if the timeline is defined, if the deadline of the assessment is already passed, then you will not be able to do the reassessment. Okay, so compared to I'm showing to you, I would like to show to you how it looks like when you as a teacher, how you want to check the progression of the students on doing the assessment. So when you check here, okay, this is how you can read the allocation. So this student having will be assessed by these students, and then okay, might be I can check in the let me check on the other group. Okay, so maybe we can see from here. So as mentioned earlier, I'm the student 03, right? So I give this mark to these students, and these students giving this mark to me. Okay. So if you want to read how to read this table, Dr. Lim Lei Cheng are going to assess Ahmad Sobri and student 003, and this student will be assessed Dr. Lim Lei Cheng. Remember the one that I said a participant without the submission can do the assessment. So this is why the other students will be appear without the submission. Okay. Okay, might be I can show you the example as in the slide. Okay, this is how it look like when you see everybody are doing the submission, and for those who are not submitting, you can see there's no submission there. It will be stated there, and then if you can see any dash, meaning that the students are not done yet on the marking, on the assessment. Okay. Is there any questions about this peer assessment during the assessment phase?
Zabiba.
Yes.
Yeah, Lei Cheng here.
Yes.
Just want to confirm, right? Just now you make the group mode as a separate groups, right? So meaning
Yes.
only group members can assess the performance of their own group members, right?
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay. So if we would like to, if we are not set up according to the group, then any members can assess lah. If we allocate the random allocation.
Yes. If you want to set the allocation, regardless of the grouping, then you don't have to set in separate group. You have to set in no group.
Oh, okay. Sure. Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. Are you done on the assessment? You can pick the one that you have on your page. It's good if you can complete all the based on the allocated submission on your page, so that we can see how the result at the end looks like. Any other questions about this submission, about this peer assessment during the assessment phase? Okay, even though you can see the students assess themselves, as a lecturer also, you are able also to do the grading on the submission. So something like you also will be going to contribute as assessor in this activity. Okay. So as a teacher, if you are checking the progression of the students on the peer assessment during the class, so from time to time you have to refresh the page so that you can capture what is the updates on this activity. Okay, I believe that a few of you already completed the assessment. Okay, if you don't mind, can I switch to the next phase? Okay, so for example, assume that everybody already completed on the assessment. So when you do something like you can see the progression when everybody already have the numbers, the point form in their on the row. So meaning that they already completed. If you see only the dash, means that the students are not done yet. And then if there is any grading, for example, might be as a teacher, you thought that might be these students having too high marks, right? To have too high grades, then you can visit the assessment that done by that particular students, and then you can have the option to override their grades. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question here, Javiva.
Yes.
Previously, we did this exercise with PBL groups. I can remember 3 groups. Only one student did it with differential grading. Means there are 10 students, so 9 students. Some were 50%, some 60%, but majority of the student graded each other with 80% or more.
Okay. Then your questions, Dr. Nilesh?
So this before doing this peer evaluation, should we brief them, the students, the utility of this peer assessment?
Okay, probably what we can encourage them is, might be we can show them, if let's say they have done earlier, from there we can show them as example if they are not contributing for this peer assessment activity. In terms of if let's say there are no submission from them, they are not assessed their friends, and actually it will be contribute to the grade that they are going to get from the peer assessment. One thing about if they are not doing the assessment, actually pity to the team members of not getting the good grade from their team members, even though they did the submission, if they did all the assessment, right? So we have to encourage them to complete to do a required submission, a required assessment, so that actually they are helping each other in improving the activities, the giving the as a feedback for them to improve further on the next coming group work, right? Am I correct, Dr. Nilesh?
No, I mean, if everybody gives everybody more than 80%, then then it is not sound, is it not?
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, correct. But that's why I said they have to be honest in terms of grading the students. Might be we have to define also clearly in our assessment form what is the aspect that they are going to. We have to define specifically actually the criteria that needed in order for them to assess their friends. For example, okay, might be the first option is might be attending all the meetings. And then the second level will be attending a few only, and then never attend. So that when we define it in specific criteria, so they can also assess accurately on their friends. But as mentioned earlier, even though we try to define as specific as we can in the rubric or in the evaluation, the assessment form, but sometimes they have the mutual agreement among them. They are tend to give full marks even though that particular team members is not contributing at all on their group work, right? So this is might be the role as teacher to encourage them to being honest, so that actually this attitude can be, if you are not giving them, if you are not doing it honestly, they are not actually improve themselves in terms of being evaluator, being assessor, to be more critical, to be more, how to say that, to be more observant on doing the assessment. Am I correct?
Yeah,
if let's
that
say
means,
they are,
yeah, that means your view is that rubric should be very much objective.
yes, correct. So that, for example, might be using the, but in terms of the group work, it's probably we have to come up with the more specific criteria and level. But in terms of written submission, then you can have to show, you have to show specifically what the existing, that what they exist, the aspect of you that they are going to be assessed on that, based on the written submission. As among the from the sample that we have on the peer assessment, when we do the written submission, they do for the, example, the written submission based on the proposal. So proposal of the research, right? So they use the peer assessment on using the workshop on asking the students to submit their proposal, so that this is the early stage for the students to know the feedback among their peers, how what to be improved in their proposal submission, or what is the other ideas, might be they also contribute to in giving the ideas on how what is the related to their topic of in their proposal, something like that. So
that means it is the task was forming a group research proposal.
Yes, correct. Most of the peer assessment, actually they are doing it for postgraduate level, for the in terms of written submission, which is the individual work, because because I think might be because of the master level, they are going to become a lecturer, become the instructor, right? So yeah, they have to learn on how to give the feedback, how to assess the other works. So this is the starting point for the lecturers to teach among the postgraduate students on how to give the feedback, how to assess the other works, the students' work. Am I correct?
Yeah, it is a very important objective now. I mean, even at maturity level, also many do not have. This is one of the neglected part in medical education now. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, if you already finished on doing the assessment for all the peers that already been allocated to you, can we move to the next phase, which is the grading? Okay, so from the assessment phase and to the grading evaluation, there's no automated process. So you have to switch manually, click on the switch to the next or switch to the evaluation phase. Then you can see the grading evaluation phase will be highlighted. As usual, the transition from phase to phase, it prompts you the message whether you want to confirm or not on the transition. All right. So in this grading evaluation, you are going to do this task where you are going to calculate the submission based on the grades that given in the assessment form provided by us to the students. And then we can do the calculation on the assessment grade, where it will be calculated based on the comparison of the assessment from the students to the other students. Okay. And then at the end, you can also give a conclusion of this activity. Right. So in this grading evaluation, the option of the grading evaluation by default now, we only have one, comparison with the best assessment. Okay. And then the grading evaluation setting, there are 5 levels of comparison, whether you want to make as a very lax, which is very relaxed, means that it's not so strict, up to the very strict. But by default, the workshop setting, it will be on fair. Okay. And then in order for you to do the calculate, you have to click on the recalculate grades. So when you click on the recalculate grades, the system will calculate all the grades that having on the every single submission from every assessor, which is their peers. Then it will be calculate, will be displayed on the under the grade for submission. Okay, this is the grade. I think this is the average grade that calculated based on the grades that given received by the other students. Okay, and then this is the grade that we define on the assessment. Remember that I just set to be 0 for the grade assessment because I'm not going to to take the grade of assessment where it calculate the how good you are as being assessor. Sorry. Then after you finish on the calculation, okay, might be when you see the based on the average, you can revisit the submission. Okay, for that particular students, because might be you can see, okay, there is one submission which is with the highest marks. Might be you thought that that is the good work, so you just click on the submission, and then from this submission that you already click on, there is option for you to select this submission to be published later when you switch to the closed phase. So this published submission is good if you are using the example, the written submission assessment, okay, but not for the group work because we evaluating the person, not the submission. So you don't have to choose any published submission for group work. But if you are doing for the individual work, then you can pick which one that to be a good example for you to show to the other students. Okay. Then that is how you can select on the best submission to be published, to be shared to the other students. Okay, so once you finish, then you can click on the close workshop. After I click on the close workshop, what will happen is the grade from the submission as well as the grade from the assessment will be pushed to the grade book. And as a student, you're going to get, you're going to see your grade of submission and your grade of assessment. Okay, so it will look like this on the portal. Okay, for IMU staff for the e-learn portal, we are not going to show the marks like this. We are going to show as a grade, but not for the training portal. Okay. So they can view their grade of submission and their grade for assessment, and they can see how their friends give them, how their friends rate them during this on this peer assessment. If let's say you don't want to show them how their friends evaluate them, so my advice is when you switch to the close, you just hide the activity, mean that the students cannot see how their friends evaluate them, but they can see only the grade. Okay. All right. Is there any questions so far about this peer assessment?
Puan Zabiba.
Yes.
Leaching here again. Yeah, I'm curious about the the separate group, right? Let's say if in one group we have 8 members, right? So if then normally we will assign, like, let's say I'm one of the group member, I will need to assess another 7 group members altogether, right? Or I only assign to assess, let's say 2 members from my group only. How
Okay.
it works.
Okay, if let's say you want to let everybody in the group to assess, then you have to choose the numbers of the submission based on the maximum team members.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But if let's say you just want to let everybody having 2 submission, then you can just set then the system will be only allocate 2 submission per students, even though you have 5 members in that group.
Oh, okay, okay. 2 submissions per student. So meaning we need to assess 2 submission lah.
Yes. So if you set to be 2, then you're going to have 2. But just now, because not everyone in the group do the submission, that's why you just only have 2.
Oh, okay.
But by right, if everybody are submitting, then you can see everybody will be all the submissions from every team members will be there.
I see. Okay, okay. Thanks.
Right. Okay, what do you think about this peer assessment activity? So I just want to share, okay, from the previous practice, normally when we do the peer assessment, the lecturer will distribute the form, and the student have to fill up the team members and what is the marks given to the respected members, right? Then they return back the form to you. So might be you are getting the form using the email, using the whatever platform that they are able to submit, right? And then you have to compile from all the marks given from these different files into one Excel file. Am I correct? If you've done like that before. Okay, so by using this activity, what the process that we can simplify is to capture all the submission in one place, where during the submission phase, right? So during the submission phase, you also can track whether the students already submitted or not. Compared to the previous one, you have to wait until the students to email to you, to submit to you, right? So from this activity, you can check from time to time how many students already submitted. And then once everybody already submitted, then you can allocate all the submissions to the students when you go to the allocation and switch to the assessment. So it will be done automatically by the system. So you don't have to pick which file to be given to the other students to do the assessment, right? Okay, that is how we can simplify the process of the peer assessment when you use the workshop activity. I hope that, okay, from this activity, what good that we can do is we can enable the students to be a more critical role, to be assessor, and then they can familiar with the rubric and how to understand, and then they can understand how the teacher to assess them, and they can know what to be expected to have when they do the submission. Okay, if they're familiar with the rubric, they know what to do, going to be expected on the they will have in their submission. And then we hope that from this activity as well, they are going to be being observed as from multiple assessor, which is from their colleagues, other than only from one teacher, right? And this is also a platform for the students to interact with their friends and give when they have to give the feedback. Okay, if they are giving the feedback face to face, sometimes there might be the friends being offended, right? But when they do online, which is not facing the friends, then they can be more honest when they give the feedback. And then we are also from this activity, they can also mail it more readily for the students to being acceptance on feedback given by their friends. Okay, I think this is the benefits of when we do the peer assessment. what about the others? Might be, is there any other benefits that might be you think it can be it can get from this peer assessment? Can you share with the rest? Okay. No one to want to be sharing your experience using the peer assessment before, or might be you think any idea about this being this peer assessment that you might be can apply this in your institution? Okay. If okay, from the page, the course page that we provide for you on this training portal, okay, there are another activity that might be you can participate. Is the quiz, just to check your knowledge, to do your knowledge check. So you can go to the quiz, check your knowledge 2021, and then you can click on the attempt button to start answering all the questions in the quiz, just to check whether you understand the topic that we have for today. Okay, you can go to the quiz just below our hands-on session, and then you can click on the attempt quiz, and then you can answer the question. Okay, I will encourage for you to get to answer the question so that I know how good I am when deliver this topic to you. All right. Oh yeah, I just noticed that the one message for the evaluation of marking empowering learners to be more professional and ethical. Yes, correct. So this is another way that we want to let them to be more ethical, more professional, to being criticized, right? More criticized. Okay. I think it already reached to the end of the session. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for your attention. And don't forget to give a feedback from that going to be provided by our moderator upon this workshop. I hope to see you again with another topic to be shared on I almost welcome with the feedback about my presentation and when I conducting this workshop. Thank you so much from everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Zabiba and Ms. Nurhasliza, for doing a great job conducting a very interesting workshop. Also, I thank all of you for joining us today. I hope that all of you have enjoyed today's workshop and gained a great deal of knowledge from all the presentations. Before we go, we would really appreciate your feedback on today's activities. Would everybody go to the online feedback form, which can be accessed by scanning the QR code displayed on the screen and supply us with their comments. The link of the feedback form also pasted in the chat panel. Please also remember to visit our iLRF website, and you are very much welcome to post your thoughts or feedback on our Padlet in our virtual lobby. Tomorrow will mark the beginning of the IMU International Learning Resources Festival 2021, and we look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow until Thursday for this exciting 3-day event. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.